Coming up within the hour, President Trump is expected to speak to farmers as the war in Iran forces many to tighten their belt. What one farmer is hoping to hear in that speech. Plus, Fannie Mae is now accepting crypto-backed mortgages, the company paving the way for digital currency. The concerns it's raising for some financiers. And the family of a Loyola student shot and killed less than a mile from campus is speaking out what they're saying about this highly politicized crime. I'm Nick Smith, in for Nichole Berlie today. You're watching NewsNation Live. Today, a deal to fund most of DHS heading to the House after an overnight Senate breakthrough. The bill would finally pay TSA officers, hopefully easing long airport lines. But money for ICE and Border Patrol left out of the legislation. We're tracking a potential vote on day 42 of this partial government shutdown. And President Trump's deadline to strike Iran over the Strait of Hormuz delayed as the regime has slowed tankers to a trickle in the crucial waterway. With just 2 average per day crossing compared to more than 100 before the war started. The latest live from the Middle East. Plus, help for farmers on the way.
We'll be announcing a variety of actions that we're taking to support American farmers. We'll never forget, we love the farmers.
We'll take you to the White House where the president is welcoming America's growers. Good afternoon. We begin today with the light at the end of the tunnel for TSA workers who have been stuck in the middle of a political firestorm. As Democrats and Republicans in the Senate have finally come to an agreement over funding of the Department of Homeland Security. This comes after more than 40 days of debate and 40 days of ever-growing airport lines, as Democrats did not want any additional money for ICE or Border Patrol without the promise of reforms, which Republicans did not want to impose on the agency. By 3 a.m., the two sides decided to just leave that part of the funding off the table and pass the rest of the funding package. But TSA officers are not out of the woods just yet, as the bill still needs to pass the House and President Trump still has to sign it. NewsNation Washington correspondent Tom Dempsey is live at the White House with the latest. Tom, good afternoon.
Hey, Nick. Yeah, so we might get some updated statements from President Trump about this ongoing Department of Homeland Security shutdown when he hosts farmers here at the White House and gives a speech. But like you said, this is not a done deal right now. The focus now shifts to the House to get this deal done after the Senate passed a measure to fully fund the Department of Homeland Security during an overnight vote. So with this deal in place, at least with the Senate that approved the plan, agencies like FEMA, Coast Guard, the TSA notably, and Secret Service will be fully funded, but ICE and Border Patrol will not. The deal also does not include those law enforcement demands from Democrats, including requiring federal officers and agents to take masks off and carry proper identification. So to be very clear, Nick, yes, this has passed in the Senate, but it does face some uncertainty moving ahead in the House. On one side, like I said, you have the Democrats who might continue to push for these changes to federal law enforcement, changes like requiring federal law enforcement officers to take their masks off and show proper identification. There might be representatives who really put their foot down about all that. But on the other side, you might also have some Republicans upset that ICE and Border Patrol are not getting any money in as part of this deal. So this is not a done deal just yet. And there might be some further negotiations as well as a vote later today in the House, Nick.
Tom, one more question for you. We're set to hear from President Trump within the hour about farmers, and that event is focused on the relief that they supposedly need and what he plans to do for them. What is the White House saying about this deal and how they're considering it?
Yeah, so as far as the White House is concerned and President Trump is concerned with this ongoing shutdown, the big focus has been trying to get TSA agents paid. And President Trump actually posted the Truth Social about this, saying he's going to issue an order to get TSA agents paid. And that money, from a source telling us here at the White House, that money will come from the One Big Beautiful Bill passed by Congress last year. The president writing he wanted to, quote, stop the Democrat chaos at the airports. But, Nick, as some of our our viewers might unfortunately know firsthand, this all comes as flyers continue to experience some travel nightmares at airports, some waiting in line for hours at TSA checkpoints. And with TSA agents working without paychecks right now, the agency has reported over 40% call-out rates at some airports, while around 500 security officers have quit during the shutdown. So it's important to note with that order from the president, if the House is able to quickly pass this shutdown deal, that would make that order from the president unnecessary. Nick?
Right, Tom. And then the question will be, how quickly will those workers get paid if that money is indeed greenlit? Tom Dempsey, live at the White House. Tom, thank you so much. While the Senate has passed legislation to fund TSA that could signal relief is on the way, it's not a quick fix as long lines expected to continue throughout another busy travel weekend. National correspondent Nancy Liu is live at LAX with the latest. Nancy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to you, Nick. There's still a lot of anger and anxiety, and at a few airports, little improvement with long security lines. The biggest snarl remains in Houston. That's where the security wait time at Bush Intercontinental is still almost 3 hours, but that's an improvement from over 4. That's been the situation pretty much all week due to a TSA call-out rate of over 40%. Many passengers have been missing their flights or working to rebook their flights while they're in line.
I came here more than 3 hours. I have been in line for 2 hours, and I think I have 1.5 hours ahead still.
Now, with actual funds yet to come through for TSA workers, staffing at major airports is in flux. The call-out rate has averaged over 11% nationwide. In Atlanta, one passenger called the security situation a game of roulette. Thursday lines fluctuated between 30 minutes and several hours. All of it despite the deployment of ICE officers at over a dozen airports this week. ICE has largely focused on security and crowd control as a depleted force of qualified TSA screeners still struggle to get people through the lines any faster. Now, a flight from Houston, it just landed here at LAX, so we're going to head down and check in with those passengers now. Of course, they spent less time on their flight, Nick, than waiting to get onto that flight.
And Nancy, you know, one of the things we keep hearing too about those lines is that there's nothing to eat and usually no bathrooms near those areas because you haven't made it past that point, which also adds to the frustration. We've also heard about nearly 500 TSA officers who've already quit their job. What about the future of TSA?
Well, Nick, TSA has about 50,000 employees, so the loss of nearly 500 is just a tiny fraction of that. But it's notable because more than 1,000 TSA workers, they quit after the last shutdown. According to a former TSA worker who now runs a travel newsletter, damage has been done.
This is something that these officers are never going to forget. And I think that once they do get paid, because they're not going to get paid immediately, it's going to take some time before they receive their paychecks. But once their paychecks come and, you know, they find their footing, I think that they're still going to be questioning if this is the job for them and if they want to continue working at TSA.
And as many people know, today is supposed to be payday for most TSA workers, and for now, it's looking like another zero. Nick?
And nobody wants to hear that for those workers. Nancy Liu, live at LAX. Nancy, thank you so much. For more, I'd like to welcome in AFGE Vice President of Local 1127 and Union Steward at Lead TSA Officer in Boise, Idaho, Cameron Cochums. Cameron, good afternoon, and thank you so much for joining us.
How's it going, Nick? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are hearing stories of TSA officers on the brink of losing everything and going to food banks. How are you holding up, and what has your experience been like working during this partial government shutdown?
You know, it's been really exhausting. You know, you have to live every day, day by day. You don't know when your next paycheck's going to be, so it's really hard to plan for the future. People are having to forego vacations. They don't know when they can pay rent. I have car repairs that I want to do that I can't do. I have vet bills that I want to go take care of my dog who's got an ear infection. Can't do that until this is all over. And those are minimal issues compared to what other people are having to do with families and children and stuff like that.
And Cameron, but the deal is too, I don't think it's fair to measure anybody's pain. You sit there, pain is pain, and no one should have to endure this pain. One of the questions we keep asking is, who do you all blame? Is that even part of the equation anymore?
I think at the end of the day, people blame the people in D.C. It doesn't matter who they are, R, D, it's just them upstairs. When I talk about, they want to run government like a business. And if you're going to run government like a business, you can't not pay us for 2 months. And if you are, who do you blame but the CEO?
Cameron, let me ask you this. When you saw the implementation of ICE agents at the airports, what were the thoughts among you and your colleagues? Was this a welcomed addition, or were you like, wait a minute, this doesn't solve our problem?
Yeah, I think I describe it as a Band-Aid over a gaping wound. At the end of the day, what we need is our paychecks. Having these guys who are getting paid come and hand out water bottles in the line, I think a lot of people find that insulting, and we just need to get a paycheck. This is just another distraction for what's going on, I believe.
Cameron, the Senate has passed a DHS funding deal that is still has to head to the House and get the president's signature before approval can actually go through and everyone can get a paycheck again. Let's listen to some of what we are hearing from travelers about the lines.
Oh my God, this is insane. I mean, I've never experienced anything like this. It's crazy. It's insane.
You don't experience this in a lot of other countries, and I just feel like it's unacceptable.
I had to change my flight. I came here more than 3 hours. I have been in line for 2 hours, and I think I have 1.5 hours ahead still.
1.5 hours ahead still. Others are saying this is not what they expect. This is nothing new. You've heard this before, and you're saying that long lines won't disappear immediately. What do you make of the long lines we are still seeing, and how much hope does that give you that relief and pay are on the way?
Yeah, I feel for these passengers who might be missing their flights and everything, but all these long lines, those are families that aren't going with pay. Their lives are being upended way more than these people who are waiting in lines, So I hope this is what pushes it over. And, when they're waiting in line, they should be calling Congress and telling them to pass this funding bill so we can get going. So they have a lot of time, so might as well do that.
Cameron, you know what? You just hit the nail on the head with that one, because I'm thinking if you got time to complain, why don't you call your legislature and your representatives, because the TSA agent is not at fault for this. They can't do a job that if they're not there to do that job. Cameron, each day we see new numbers and percentages of TSA agents who have quit or called out. And so far that number continues to jump. About 500 have left the job entirely. Our own Nancy Liu talked about how that's only a small percentage of TSA agents overall, but some airports are being impacted more heavily than others. What has kept you on the job? And have you thought about, you know what, Nick, I need to step away. I have a dog and I have things I need to take care of.
I think at the end of the day, I've worked for the agency for 5 years and I want to make this a career. And what I've been really pushing forward is helping my coworkers. I've been through the union, we've been facilitating food bank donations. Groups are donating Easter baskets for us on Sunday, and just helping out my coworkers, because we are a team, we're our family, and we want to get through this together. And I don't want anyone to have to quit or lose their jobs or lose their houses or anything like that. And
Cameron, that's my last question for you as we wrap up here. What is the message you have for Congress and legislators who are still going back and forth over funding?
I think it's really simple. Pass this funding bill, get us paid. But also, we need protections after all this is going on, because people have had to call out to take care of their families. And TSA is going to come after them after this is all over for call outs and things like that. So we need protections. We need bonuses that are across the board to pick up the pieces that we had to, that fell down because of their mess to begin with.
And may I add to that, we need TSA agents to stop being the stopgap every time there's a government shutdown. You guys are not at fault. Cameron Cochins, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Nick. Have a good one.
President Trump's deadline to strike Iran over the Strait of Hormuz delayed as the Pentagon weighs deploying more troops overseas. The latest live from the Middle East. Next. And the White House welcoming farmers today. We'll have President Trump's remarks live from the South Lawn.